What is up world, Matty Beebs here, the cinematographer. So glad to see you guys' faces. Welcome back to another cinematography breakdown. Today, we're going to be breaking down the cinematography of Alita Battle Angel, the trailer. So, let's get into it. And for this breakdown, I want the focus to be on what I call levels. And what I mean by levels is fill in the frame of the foreground, middle ground, and the background to create a cinematic image. And we're going to see how that is accomplished. So, let's get into it. So taking a look at this first frame, this is Dr. Dyson at the junkyard finding Alita's head. We can automatically tell by the color of the light, it's at golden hour, and we can tell that the sun is at a lower angle, creating those long shadows, which is why Dr. Dyson is side lit and not top lit. So let's get into Cinema Designer and take a look at how this scene was put together. Alright, cool. So as you can see on this scene, it's a very simple scene, basically using three lights. We have our RE light right here, which is a RE650, and it's just shooting straight across into our talent's face, as our talent is looking directly into our camera, which this camera here is the RE Alexa, and we're just shooting straight on at a 40mm, which if we look through the lens, this is what it looks like. We have that side light. If we look, we have the R650 just shooting straight across, and if I was on set, I'd probably put a Opal or a 216, maybe even a 250 to help soften that light, and we want to keep it an attractive hard light, if that makes any sense. Okay, and as you can see here, we have a bounce board just taking that light that already exists from our 650, and we're just going to bounce it right back into Dr. Dyson's face. We don't want to keep this side of his face in complete shadow, as we saw from the screen grab. And if we back out a little bit, we see hanging on these two trusses are two 2K space lights, just helping fill in the ambient light. And then also in the background, we have the Alita Battle Angel kind of banner. I just pasted it on there. It was the best representation of the background that I could find, and it just so happened to be from Alita. Speaking about levels on this frame, we have Alita's head right here in the foreground. We have Dr. Dyson in the middle ground, and then in the background, we have the junkyard. So that's three levels in this frame, which is a great way to fill your frame. And so that's how this scene was lit. Let's take a look at my final render, and as you can see, we have that RE650 shooting in from the right hand side, giving us that nice hard attractive light, and then we have some of the fill light coming in on the left side. It's not in complete darkness, but it's not completely bright, and this is achieved by having that balance and also those two space lights up above. So moving on to the next scene, we have the alley scene. This was a really cool scene for me. We have on the left hand side, we have our ominous figure, which is probably a robot, I'm assuming. We have our heroes here in the middle ground of the frame. And then also in the background, we have some green light spilling in. We have the cobblestone here. It is wet, as you can see. Just gets more filling to the scene. If we're talking about levels in this still, you can see here in the foreground, we have our dark shadow figure, which is our bad guy. We have the middle ground, again, our heroes. And we have in the background, we have that green light spilling in, giving this image a little bit more depth. So let's jump into Cinema Designer and take a look at how I made it. Cool, so starting at a overhead shot, you can see here we have our robot right there, standing there. We have our camera on a techno dolly, and we have our talent right here. And then we also have that green light that we saw spilling in the background. These are two walls that I created. They look like Lego walls. I gotta get better at adding textures to my walls, so just bear with me, guys. If you can notice, I'm really only using two lights to light this entire scene. We have that back green light that I'm using in RS120, and we have our little diffusion box here with some grid on there to help keep it and focus it in the direction that we want, hanging from this truss here. I also have another RES120 just filling in some more of the green background right there. And the main light that I'm using here is the 4-bank Kino Flow. Now, this light I really liked, and I think that it worked perfectly because of the shape of it, and I'm aiming it directly on the back of Dr. Dyson, which is where in this scene, if we notice, there is a hard light. So here, there's a hard light on the left side of his face here. One thing that I'm gonna note here is I didn't make this light directly behind Dr. Dyson, because if I did, there'd be a shadow that fell on Alita's face. So just pushed over the Kino Flow and kind of staggered it so that the light would hit Dr. Dyson and also land on Alita's face. And when we look through the camera, we can really see the levels of this scene. We have here in the foreground again, the robot. We have our heroes in the middle ground, and then in the background, we have that green light spilling in, just kind of creating some dynamic. And I also try to add some water textures to my cobblestone to recreate the water that we saw in the main still. Again, we are on that techno dolly filming with the RE Alexa, and the lens we are using is a 35mm, giving us a kind of a wide perspective, but not too wide and also not too tight. We want to be able to see our three characters, but also give a sense of where we are in location. So a 35mm lens is a great choice for this scene. So let's look at my final render and see how I did. All right, awesome. So this is the final render. Again, we can see that 4-bank Kino coming in and fulfilling that hard light that we saw on Dr. Dyson's face within the screen grab. The right side of his face plays in shadows. Alita is being lit by that same light. And it's kind of cool how you can see the eye light here I know that I messed up on the textures of her eyes, so disregard that. But you can see the source in Alita's eyes, which is really cool. And then we have this dark, ominous robot here in the foreground. Again, heroes in the middle ground, and then that green light spilling in the background, creating depth and dimension again to this frame. So this is really cool, very cinematic. I really like this. So let's jump into the very last scene that we got. And this one I'm gonna call Alita Fist Clench. Okay, so here is the last frame that we got here. This is Alita after she fell through the hole and what looked like a couple of houses in the trailer. I really enjoyed this scene because she was backlit. The camera's at a low angle, making Alita our hero feeling really powerful, kind of giving her dominance in the scene. And I really enjoyed the eye light, which took me a little bit to catch, but I saw that it is kind of in the middle or middle to lower of her eye, which to me reads she has her eyes on the prize and whatever it is that she has to face is directly in front of her. And it's one of those things where it's like you see the light at the end of the tunnel, and to me that's how the eye light reads. Wherever she's looking at and wherever she has to travel, it may be a dark path, but at the very end of it there is a light at the tunnel. So that's why I really like her eye lights right here. And again, the low angle is really, really nice. And if we're talking levels and dimensions with this frame, we have Alita in the foreground, we have our objects that are metal, huge metal things in the middle ground, and then also in the background, if you can kind of notice it, it's a huge wall, and also the light that is spilling from above fills in that third level of dimension of the frame. So let's get into Cinedesigner and see how I recreated this scene. Alright, sweet. As you guys can see, this was kind of a bigger scene for me. This was really fun. I've got these two massive walls here, and lighting this entire scene is only 6 lights. So let's get into the lights first. We'll start from the top and go down to the bottom. We've got 2 trusses here, and on this truss that is directly above Alita, I'm using one Digital Sputnik DS3, but we're shooting directly down on Alita, as you can tell. I'm using this as a hair light to help further separate her from the background. So let's go to the next truss. I'm using 4 Digital Sputnik DS3 lights as a backlight to help separate her again from the background. And as you can see, they're all pointing. Let's get a little bit closer. Cool. And as you can see from this point of view, they're all aiming straight down at Alita's back. So that is the backlight that we saw in our original frame from the movie. So now that we went to the lights up above, let's go down and look at this ARRI S30 shooting through a quarter grid, half grid, whatever you'd want to use on set. And also we have a control device here to help focus that light on our talent. And this is her eye light. This is Alita's eye light that we saw. This is that light at the end of the tunnel. We know she's got to go through a dark patch. We know that at the end of it, there will be light, there will be happiness, however you want to look at it. And what's really cool about Cinedesigner is that you can see where that eye light is without even having to render it yet. So really cool. Taking a look at the camera, we are on the ARRI Alexa on some baby sticks, and we're at that lower angle. Let's take a look through the camera. We're on that lower angle again to emphasize that this is a big moment and we want our hero to feel big. So let's take a look at the levels of this frame. Again, we have Alita in the foreground, we have the objects in the middle ground, and then we also have that wall with the light shooting down as our backlight as the background. So we've got a nice 3-layer image, which is very cinematic, very 3-dimensional in a 2-dimensional space. And this is something that I am constantly practicing and trying to get better at with my images. Cool, so let's take a look at the final render and see how I did. So we have Alita in the foreground being separated with that backlight, and you can see the hair light coming from up above. You can also see Alita's eye lights, which is really cool. It's again, it's that light at the end of the tunnel. She's got to go through some tough spots, but she does see the light at the end of the tunnel. Really cool cinematography, really great use of eye lights, which is again something that I really adore and I'm always looking for, and I'm always trying to read the subtext within those highlights. All right, sweet. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little cinematography breakdown. Again, today's focus was levels. What I want to call it is just creating a 3-dimensional space in a 2D space. As a cinematographer, the better you can create these levels in the foreground, middle ground, and background, the more cinematic your images will begin to look. Obviously, lighting has a huge thing to do with it, the placement of the camera, but creating some sort of depth and dimension in a frame is one of the best things you can do as a cinematographer. So if you guys want to know more about Cinedesigner, I put the link down in the description below. Go ahead and check it out. It allows me to plan better and shoot better. This has been Matty B as a cinematographer, and we just broke down Alita Battle Angel, the trailer. So until we meet again, guys, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.